Welcome everybody. My name is Lawrence Gosling. I'm the editorial director of smallbusiness.co.uk. So today, to switch or not to switch, that is the question. Actually, the question is, have you ever considered, as a business owner, switching your business bank account? Now, we've done some really interesting research in conjunction with the current account switching service that says, I think fascinatingly, a couple of key things really. Many businesses are still using their personal bank account to run their business through. Why would you? I don't know. I certainly wouldn't if I was a business owner myself rather than working for a business. And the second one is still after perhaps quite a few years, the impression is that it's really difficult to switch bank accounts. So we're going to discuss some of those issues today in the next hour or so in a way that I think is going to be really useful and enjoyable because we've got some people from the banking side of the equation and we've got some business owners. Now, just to be clear, we're not going to call anybody an SME on this call, right? Everybody is a business owner. It doesn't matter whether you've got 100 employees or you've got 5 or whatever. You're a business owner and you want to grow your business and you want to make it easier to run, particularly after the last sort of 2 years and kind of looking forward. So let's get into it. Let me introduce a couple of my business owners first. We've got Frederic, who runs I was going to say import-export business. That doesn't really do it sort of justice. Frederic, welcome. Your business is called Customs and Freight, isn't it? That's correct.
Yes, absolutely. It's a digital custom clearance and freight forwarding firm that also provide advisory services for global trade.
Excellent, thank you. Now I know one of the interesting things is you've got people working with you and for you in all over the world, as well as having sort of colleagues in the kind of UK. So I know some of your banking situations or challenges have been kind of really interesting, and you've run a couple of businesses. Our other business owner is Edwin Rodrigues, who is part of Noah's Ark Media. Edwin, lovely to see you.
Hello, nice to see you too.
And just give us an idea, sort of what kind of number of people are kind of working in your sort of business. And again, are they based in the UK, overseas, or is it a mixture?
It is based in the UK. I've got two employees working for me, and there are some of the services that are outsourced. And the business is all about providing advertising services to the Ministry of Defence, the government, basically. So that's yeah.
And I know your business is kind of growing nicely because we've talked previously about the kind of number of invoices and etc. you're sort of putting out. And one of our other entrepreneurs, probably quite a different sort of part of the kind of the sort of business ecosystem is James Shadimehr, Garage Nation and Event Management. James, good to see you.
Hello, how you doing?
Now, yeah, we're good. Now, give us just again similar question that I've asked kind of Edwin and Frederic. What sort of size of your business, number of employees, here, overseas? What's the kind of mix that you've got?
Yeah, it's music events and festivals. Organising those is the main part of the business. There's a couple of offshoots like a bar business and some providing some staff and employees. The majority of staff end up being workers that just work on the events and freelance and contractors. But there has been one regular full-time employee, and it's all based in the UK staff-wise. Events-wise, there were some events overseas like Amsterdam, Ibiza, and Dubai.
And I'm sure you're looking forward to getting back to doing those, yeah, because they're all a lot sunnier places than the UK is most of the time. Now let me bring in Joe Ainsley from the current account switching service. Joe, lovely to see you again, and thank you for joining me. Now, I touched on the kind of research, and you and I have sort of spoken at sort of greater length on that in a separate video, which people can see perhaps after they've watched this. Just go back to some of that research that I alluded to in my kind of introduction about, it still fascinates me why people would use their personal bank account to run the business. That was one of the key things that came out, wasn't it? And the reticence still probably to switch.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks for having me today, Lawrence. I think there was some very, very stark output from the research that was done and from the survey. The fact that people still use a personal account to run their business, I am with you. I find that quite shocking, and I'd really like to understand why that is. Why have people not transitioned? There's so much that they can get that's in addition if you are running your business through a business account. Access to money management applications, etc., to relationship managers, and that in itself, I think, would help businesses no matter how large or small they are.
Lovely, thanks for that. Now let's bring in the banker, Helen Bierton from Starling Bank. I think Helen, it's kind of right to say, Starling, you describe yourselves as disruptors. I think you know, anybody watches TV will have seen advertising from you in the last sort of 6 to 12 months, which is again obviously a sign of the growth of the sort of business. But you know, I think it's right to say that the sort of fastest growing sort of banking provider for businesses. I nearly used the small businesses expression there. So that's £2 I'm going to put in the swear jar afterwards. But more seriously, yeah, I mean, this is kind of a core part of Starling's proposition, isn't it? To kind of try and service and help business owners.
Absolutely, Lawrence. I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to chat with you today, and with Frederic and Edwin and James. You know, there's so many Frederic, Edwin and Jameses out there running their own businesses, and Starling set up as a business itself just launched 5 years ago, and we've now got just over 400,000 business customers like Frederic, Edwin and James, and we're thrilled to be growing so quickly. And our philosophy is that, you know, banking should make business lives easier. People should be able to focus on running their business, and for a long time I think businesses have been underserved by banks, and we've really tried to change and disrupt the way that banking works. As you described, we describe ourselves as a business disruptor ourselves. And I think, you know, just to pick up on one of the points you've made there, you know, why do businesses still run their accounts through personal accounts? Well, we hear a lot of those examples, and a lot of it comes down to the fees that they might have to pay on the business accounts. And of course, one of the areas we came out with and launched is a dedicated sole trader account with no monthly fees, for that very reason, so that businesses can properly set up their accounts and run it as their business, and then generate so many other benefits like Joe described. So I'm thrilled to be here today. I'm thrilled to talk about how we can help businesses bank differently, and very excited for the session.
Lovely, thank you very much, Helen. Now let me come across to you, sort of, Suelin, because you're, I think, in this discussion, in the interesting sort of space, as it were. You are both obviously a business owner, but you're providing kind of outsourced business solutions and support for businesses similar to sort of Frederic, Edwin, and sort of James's. So you know, your business, for those who are not familiar, JSGD Limited. So we can find you online, as I sort of did last week when we were doing some sort of research. So my kind of first question to you is, in the context of the services that you offer, have you had businesses kind of asking you, thinking this part of the role that your business can play?
Absolutely. I mean, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and lovely to meet you all. Yeah, I kind of sit in a very in the middle role, because I obviously have my own, as a business owner, I have my own banking issues and accounts and things to deal with. But equally, I work with the Edwins and the Jameses and startups. I've worked with quite a number of startups. So I am actually at the start when they are going, oh, I have this business idea and I want to open a bank account and I want to set up accounting systems and things like that. So I help them with that. And then equally, those who are already established and need a little bit of help with their bookkeeping and you know, pointing in the right direction. So I actually recommend a lot of services, and Starling has been one that I've recommended quite frequently. So yeah, it's quite a unique position to be in, and I kind of really see the importance of really good, effective banking for small businesses. And I'm definitely an advocate of one of those do not use your personal accounts, and also even when you have a business account, don't use it for personal reasons either. So yeah, I fly the flag of keeping it all nice and tidy. Absolutely.
Excellent. Lovely, thanks you for that, Suelin. Now, Chris Pond, let me sort of bring you in. So again, I think you've kind of got an unusual kind of place in this discussion. Actually, you know, obviously you're an independent director for the current account switching service, but also you're part of the financial inclusion sort of commission. So when you look at some of these kind of issues around sort of business banking, particularly for sort of businesses that don't have a large number of employees, that are relatively young, sole traders, Is there are there some kind of inclusion issues? Do you come across situations where people think it's very hard for them to open a business bank account, so they do end up using their personal bank account?
Not only bank accounts, but also insurance policies, savings policies, etc., that are so necessary, and it's more necessary now as a result of the pandemic, which many businesses have suffered badly through. Many have not been able to access, of course, the support measures which were available to take people through the pandemic. And although I don't recommend, I think I do understand why many businesses do continue to use their personal account and switch between their personal finances and their business finances. And that's partly because many of them, especially through the pandemic, have found that their status is neither one nor the other. You've got some people who are moving into an aspect of self-employment to supplement their incomes. Maybe their employment income has declined or has become less secure. So they've moved into some aspect of self-employment. And since they haven't moved wholeheartedly into that, then they end up using their personal account or even their credit cards for that purpose in the meantime. And there are some who, of course, are moving in the other direction, those businesses who find that they can't sustain the self-employment and have to move into some form of employed status. So I understand why businesses find themselves in that position. Though, as I've said, I certainly wouldn't recommend using personal accounts or personal finances for business purposes.
Oh, lovely. Thanks for that, Chris. Now, let me come to the people running the businesses sort of day to day. We're just going to ask you for some really kind of direct experiences of how you've found last sort of 18 months and address this kind of issue of business and personal sort of bank accounts intertwined. Frederic, let me sort of turn to you for this sort of question. I know last week you and I sort of discussed some of these issues. You've got your current business, Customs and Freight, and obviously you've run sort of other businesses. And obviously you've worked in financial services before you sort of set up on your own. So just share some of your kind of your sort of banking experiences in the context of running businesses.
It's actually puzzling to me that some business owners use their personal account, because it's actually very easy to open a business account as long as you have a company set up. It might be a bit different for a sole trader. I guess my experience from knowing the banking system and understanding the banking system is that banking for a company is not just banking. It's about management of money, it's about invoicing, it's about accounting, and a lot of things that you want to be able to do to run your business successfully. And my challenge is that a lot of current banking or partners that I'm using lack a bit of this 3.0 world that I will call all the applications that you can have, all the intermediaries that you can cut by using apps such as accounting apps, invoicing apps, and etc. It's very difficult sometimes to find a bank where they could be open to integration with any of those solutions. You probably have a few selection of partners, but as an entrepreneur, you're moving very quickly towards the best solution, sometimes quicker than your bank, and you would like to be able to connect your bank account with any of the solutions that you have. I will give you an example, which is just a business plan platform where you can create your business plan, your forecast, and after you want to link that to your bank account so you can keep following what you've been thinking for your business and see how it materializes by linking it to your bank account. So this integration, I guess, it's still a bit slow on the banking side, in addition to other factors.
Lovely, thank you very much for that, Frederic. Joe Ainsley at Current Accounts Switch Service. Let me sort of come to you. There was a kind of really interesting expression, I think, Frederic used there about sort of banking 3.0. Again, I think, have you found in the course of the research that you and the team have done that perhaps there's still some people don't kind of realize how the banking system has kind of evolved? There's still very much of the view that it's a little bit high street based, so you have to walk in, do everything sort of manually. They don't realize even, the kind of the services that that you're offering, it can all be done digitally, and importantly can be done very, very quickly as well.
Yeah, definitely, Lawrence. We are aware that there's definitely still a belief that it is the main high street banks. Some people are not aware of the new digital banks or the new challenger banks. And I think Helen raised a very valid point earlier that there is still very much a belief that everything is the same, and everything absolutely is not the same. All of the banks that are available for business customers offer different things. Some will charge you for the account, some won't charge you, some might charge you, but you'll actually get additional facilities than you would do maybe with another one. So I think having the awareness and the visibility of what is on offer out there and what actually works best for you and your business, and that's absolutely critical for every business owner, I believe.
And James, let me turn to you at sort of Garage Nation. Obviously, you're, as you said in the outset, you've been running a sort of series of events, predominantly in the UK, obviously for obvious reasons. The last sort of couple of years, they will go back to being kind of abroad, fingers crossed, in the sort of next couple of years as well. What is your experience? Do you use a single business bank account? Have you run stuff through your personal account? How have you done it as your business has evolved?
Yeah, so when I very first started, a lot of it was a heavily cash business. I think around 2003, 2004. So I didn't have a huge need for a bank account at the beginning, funnily enough. And then when I would get any payments in my bank and I'd give my personal name over, the person would look at me funny, assuming I was just tax dodging, which is probably part of the reason why some people do it anyway. So
just about in case HMRC are watching this, James has always paid all of his tax on behalf of his business. It wasn't tax dodging.
Exactly, it wasn't tax dodging. I'm fully up to date.
Please carry on.
Thank you. Then after that, and now you can't survive without a bank account. I've got different banks for different companies, not for any particular reason, just because that's the way it panned out. And at the moment I've got a Lloyd's, a NatWest and a Metro. The Metro one I actually opened because of the ease of opening it compared to the other banks, because that was something I needed just to put a buy-to-let property in. So I just wanted something simple. Whereas if it was a more complicated business, I would have gone to Lloyd's because that's the interface I'm used to, and I'm very comfortable with it. But previously I've had Barclays and HSBC as well.
Interesting, lovely, thanks for that. Helen, before I sort of bring you in, I know Chris Pond wanted to sort of make a point off the back of what James is saying. Chris?
Yes, thanks, Lawrence. I just wanted to pick up on the point that James was making about the use of cash, because at the beginning of the pandemic, the beginning of 2020, we had 20 million people who were principally operating in cash. That was their main form of transaction. That is now down to 5 million. Those 5 million still are heavily dependent on it. They're going to be in trouble when cash does disappear totally, as it will in the years ahead. But I think we've got to recognise that for many businesses, there was this environment in which people expected to operate in cash. They no longer do, and therefore the need for a bank account. James talked about 2003-4. He didn't really have a need for an account because you're principally operating in cash for quite legitimate reasons, we underline. But that is an increasing imperative for businesses to have access to an account and the services that go around it. I think also there's the issue about the sense that many businesses feel that they need the support of banks as almost sort of business advisors, and therefore the loss of the high street branches may for many small businesses be quite an issue, that they like the idea perhaps of having access to those services and perhaps are not quite geared up to accessing those services, which nowadays are much better online. And I think that that's an important factor.
Yeah, really good point. Well made, Chris. Thank you very much. Helen from Starling Bank, let me sort of bring you in now, because again, you wanted to comment, I think, directly on something that James was saying.
It was actually on something that Frederic said, if I can go back to that. So, Frederic talked about lack of a 3.0 world. And I think this is a really fascinating point. And I'll try and bring together a couple of points that Chris and James made, really. You know, we have moved very far forward in terms of digital in the last 2 years, driven by COVID. I agree with what Chris had said. And there's two things that have really dominated that trend. The first was, to James's point, the ease of account opening. We had a business who was running a carpenter and interior design business that it just stopped when COVID happened, but he had the tools to be able to do removals. So he pivoted his business, opened up a new business, and needed to open an account very quickly. An ability to open an account very quickly and save time is huge for businesses, whether it's pivoting or opening new businesses. And we've really invested in that account opening experience, and being available is so crucial. But so too are those digital connections. We've moved forward massively digitally. We do the amount of things we do as individuals and people digitally and through our phones now. And the technology has moved on in ways that can give insights and advice. And I agree with Frederic, we should be able to connect our bank accounts. And that's why Starling have built everything on APIs, and we've got brilliant connections to QuickBooks and Xero and all the accounting partners. And we've got a developer portal so people can connect to us as well. This is absolutely so important. And banks have got to move forward and use the technology to help many businesses like Frederic and James's.
Lovely, thanks for that, Helen. Now let me bring Liz Barclay, Small Business Commissioner, back in. Liz, what's some of the kind of experiences that you and the team have been hearing from sort of businesses? Do they kind of echo what we've heard from James and sort of Frederic, and maybe some of the kind of issues that Chris alluded to, you know, cash and how that's changed in businesses? What have your experiences been?
Well, I'm sorry, Lawrence, if I'm repeating what other people have said. I haven't heard some of the conversation. It's been a bit intermittent technologically, and I think intermittent technologically is something that we have to be aware of, because there are still a lot of small businesses out there that aren't digital, that aren't using digital. They're using the smartphones to make phone calls and send texts. They're not using it for banking purposes or for cloud accounting software, etc. So we've still got to be aware that those are there, need help to go digital. My concern about the use of the term SMEs is that we're lumping them all together. And we do tend to say we're serving SMEs when actually what we're doing is serving the bigger end of that market. So we need to think about the sole traders, the self-employed, the smaller micro businesses and what their needs are. And a lot of them still aren't digital. And we know that making tax digital is coming down the line, and that will be a big driver for more people to go digital. But there are a lot of people who tried to set up a bank account in the days when it took such a long time that you actually had your first contract, got paid your first amount of money, and stuck it into your personal account because that was the only account that you had available to you. So you then gave up on, and I mean, I've been here, so I'm not speaking without experience. So you then carry on using your personal account because actually it works. And you don't then think about the benefits that having a business account might bring to you. So there are still quite a lot of people in that boat. Now, I have a few colleagues who provide admin services for small businesses, and I know that people find this extremely hard to believe. But one of those told me 2 weeks ago that she is still getting from her small business clients invoices written on fag packets. Now, I'm not exaggerating when I say that, not the back of envelopes, but cigarette packets. And she has a box on her doorstep into which her clients put those cigarette packets as they're driving past. She then digitizes, etc., and sends out the invoices. So we do have to be very careful because there are a lot of small businesses that are simply doing the business. They haven't got time to think beyond that, and they're not taking the time to find the right bank account, find the right cloud accounting software or whatever it might be. And we've got to really think carefully about how we help them to adopt digital. I think, this goes much wider because it's also about helping small businesses to get net zero, for instance, or it's helping small businesses to use the technology to the best advantage. And sometimes the bigger businesses need to take those steps to help them do that. And if you've not necessarily got a business bank account in the first place, then that help's not going to come from the bank, because that's not where you're going to look for the help. So we've got to be really smart about thinking, what is it that small businesses need help with, and how do we direct them to the right support at the right time for the right business? Sometimes there's just too much choice, too many options, and people don't know what the questions are to ask. So I think we've got a big job of work still to do in order to make sure that those businesses can make the best opportunity possible. These are really creative, agile businesses. We are dependent on them. We need them for leveling up. We need them to drive the recovery of the economy.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Liz. Now, Edwin, let me sort of turn to you and your experiences kind of running your sort of business. I mean, have you ever changed, sort of switched your business bank account? What would prompt you, and what has your experience been like with your bank for the last sort of 18 months, 2 years?
Okay, my experience has been quite positive. I mean, I think one of the reasons I'm with the bank that I'm with, which is NatWest, is because, I mean, initially I had a personal banking with them, and then as I moved to a sole trader business after, I mean, I worked for a couple of years, and then I moved to a sole trader business, and it was much easier for me to, because as a sole trader, you're essentially a person. I mean, it's basically being a individual rather than a limited company, which is a separate entity. So it was a smooth transition. All I had to do is just, and it kind of links with each other, but it's definitely in one app, so it's much easier to operate. But I always believed, I did a bit of research before starting my sole trader company, whether I should just bank with my personal banking or whether I should start a separate banking for as a sole trader. But it definitely helped me, and I'll tell you why. I was looking for a mortgage in a year's time, but in hindsight, I realized that because I separated my banking, it did help me, because I had to show, I mean, I had to appoint an accountant to make sure that all my incomes and expenses are properly, shown, and it was much easier for him to operate. And then he also asked me to start a bookkeeping account like QuickBooks, or so I started with QuickBooks. So it did help me to kind of get my mortgage in the end. So I think separating the banking did help me a lot. And then eventually, after a year and a half, I had to start a limited company because my company was growing. And because of the fact that I was used to NatWest, and I thought, since my relation has been good with this bank, why not start a limited company with them? And to my surprise, the business banking is actually linked on the app with the personal banking and with the sole trader banking. So so it's much easier because you're already used to operating with that bank, and most of the features are kind of the same, I believe. So it just made life much easier. So overall, my experience has been quite good. And even though I do see a lot of I mean, there might be a bit of negative points, but overall it has been good. And even though I see a lot of I do get letters through the letterbox or emails, if you'd like to switch to a personal or business banking, it just, I mean, there's nothing very enticing for me to move, because my experience has been okay so far. I mean, I think they're digitally quite good, but it's my personal opinion because I haven't tried any other bank. I have tried a Barclay's business banking, which is also quite okay because I'm a treasurer for my society that I live in. So that has been okay, but I've not used it that much. But I think NatWest has been okay for me so far.
Interesting.
So overall, it has been good. My experience has been good.
Super. Thank you very much for that, Edwin. Suelin, let me sort of turn to you. I'm kind of hoping you haven't got any clients similar to the one that Liz mentioned about dropping off. I hesitate to call them receipts in fag packets, but I think we've all been in sort of business kind of long enough in one way or another. And James obviously started in cash. So I think probably some of that cash was probably in carrier bags sort of 10 or 15 years ago. But sort of, Suelin, there's kind of some interesting points that Edwin was making there about, you know, naturally we're kind of drawn to organisations where we've kind of had a long-term business kind of relationship. It's kind of, again, maybe it's just a sort of thing, like a human thing. Well, we'll just stick with what we know. It's kind of easier. But again, he made a good point, you know, because business and personal, it sort of interweaves, doesn't it? Particularly in contexts like mortgages or maybe personal loans for other things.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I've had those clients. It made me chuckle when Liz mentioned it, because I've had those clients that turn up with, you know, just bags and bags of receipts that they've had hidden for like 5 years or something, and that you can't even read them because all the print is like almost gone and you're trying to decipher what's on there. But then I've also had the pleasure of working with those clients and moving them to digital. And I believe in empowering clients. And I think, as much as I love organizing people's lives for them and their businesses, I do want them to be able to do it. If I decided that I was going to retire, please let that happen soon. If I was going to retire, I want them to still be able to access their bank accounts and know what's going on. So I do a process of setting up simple accounting, cloud accounting software for them so that they can manage it and have that information available to them. My own personal experience with banking is kind of love-hate. So I've been with NatWest for a long time, and then I believe it was last year there was an initiative, a switch initiative, where there was a sort of a financial initiative to switch banks, and I did switch, and I switched to Starling, and the process, yes, is of course very easy, and I think if it was not last year, maybe it was the year before, because I've lost track of which year we're in with COVID. So I did switch, and as I said, the process to switch to Starling is very easy, and I think that's definitely something that's a real positive. And I think in the last 12 months, I have actually recommended and had about 5 customers of mine move to Starling. Or actually set up from the word go to Starling. So there's a lot of positives there, and it takes away the fear, because there is so much about, oh, I don't know how it goes. And I mean, I work with electricians and plumbers, and you know, people, as you say, they just want to get on with the job. You know, I mean, literally before this call, I had my electrician going, oh, I've got my assessment today and I don't know how to access my emails. You know, it's that kind of thing where there's that technological fear about, if you put it on an app, how am I going to do it? So it's made it really easy for them to access banking with the likes of Starling. And then I kind of switch back to my love-hate again, which is in my own personal walk now with Starling. Love it. It's been really good. And then I get to my business is growing. And then you have the recovery loan scheme, which I didn't want £25,000, but that's all that was on offer. And that was just it. I applied, said, yes, you passed all the credit checks, wonderful. And then I got a letter that said, sorry, actually, we can't lend you the money. Now, bear in mind, I didn't actually want 25, but then that was just it. There was nothing else. There is nothing else on offer. And I'm actually at a point in my business where I also offer property management services, and that's something that I'm looking at taking as a separate arm of my business. And so I actually want to grow that side. And so I had a bit of a bugbear with Starling on that, because I can't speak to anyone about it. I was just kind of another digital, you know, business. And yes, there's a chat facility, but you don't want to discuss your business growth on a chat facility, frankly. So I think for me, it's that middle of the ground. So on the one hand, NatWest never had any real issues, and where there were issues, they've dealt with it very professionally. And so it's the business manager element where you can go in and have a conversation and say, this is where I am with my business. And then equally, it's the digital side of things, where the ease of opening accounts and then it needs to be able to go forward from there. And I think that's a challenge for Starling as well. I mean, one of my clients has a real issue with the limit of £500 that you can pay in via the app, you know, and it caused a lot of problems because they had a check for £3,000, and the supplier actually had to send it 3 times, because the first time it got lost, The second time there was an issue with the check and Starling had to send it back. And I do think that that's something that needs to be improved. And while check payments are obviously becoming a thing of the past, there are a lot of our smaller businesses, entrepreneurs, who still take that as a payment. We're talking cash, we're talking checks as well. So, you know, I think £500 is quite a small amount, really, to deposit via the app. And then after that, you've got to send it in an envelope to in the post to Starling. So definitely a challenge for Helen, I would say, you know, to kind of take that. And I'll just kind of sum up, because I also am part of a women entrepreneur community, and I kind of threw it out to them, you know, that I was going to be sort of sat around this table, and obviously some of the things that came up were definitely the fees. A lot of our smaller entrepreneurs and micro businesses who have clients, we would live in a virtual world. I offer virtual, you know, services. Copywriters, they can work from anywhere in the world, and so they have international clients. The fees that they're paying on international payments, you know, and then also the just normal bank account fees, they've said, please say something about it, because it's really, really a hindrance to them being able to grow their businesses. So
lovely.
That's
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, you kind of raised some sort of brilliant points, and I've seen lots of hands going up. So I'm going to do this in kind of order, and I know Liz Barclay's hand went up first. She was quickest on. So Liz, come back please on some of the things that Suelin was talking about before I come to Frederic.
Yeah, I think Suelin covered a lot of ground there. I just was thinking about the check situation, and yes, there are still a lot of businesses that do need access to facilities on the high street in order to put their cash in, because they still operate in cash. One business said to me the other day, what's this? Check. What do I do with it? So you've got two ends of the spectrum there, and we've got to cater for all of those people who are still operating across that. It's a continuum, isn't it? And we're moving from one end to the other, but we're not. We must be sure we're not leaving people behind. But I do think that the big traditional banks are beginning to realise that perhaps they've moved too far away from that know your business situation that would have happened on the high street when you had a Mr. Mannering in the branch who would have known everything about your business. And so therefore it was much easier to go to and say, I need £5,000. I don't need £25,000. I need £5,000, and work out how to help the business to grow. And quite often those bank relationship managers knew that money was the last thing that many small businesses needed. What they really needed was the support and advice that would help them to take the next step. Quite often businesses think that by throwing money at it, they can solve all their problems, but really there are other solutions. And I think most of the big banks, certainly since I've taken over post in the 1st of July and talked to all the traditional banks, they're all looking for that move back a bit towards, you know, much more relationship-based working with small businesses. And I think this is also the point about SMEs. They are realizing that they have got sole traders and freelancers and micro businesses amongst their clients, and so they're not treated. They're looking at how to treat them individually and what the personalization of that relationship needs to be in order to help the business get and do its absolute best. And I think there definitely is an improvement in that way of thinking.
Lovely, thanks for that, Liz. Now, Frederic, I think you had a couple of points you kind of want to make, and I know you and I have talked in the past, because the kind of issue of kind of foreign exchange, you know, currency issues have sort of come up when you and I have sort of spoken. So yeah, just kind of make the first point I think you wanted to make off the back of what Suelin made, and we'll talk about the currency issues.
Yeah, and I guess foreign exchange make the point such as checks as well, which is you're having a lot of different banks where you have some that can offer you some features, some others that can offer you some features. And I guess when I look at all the features, my conclusion will be that I probably never switch banks, but we probably have 2 or 3, 4 different banks for my business. Because what happens is that you want to work locally, you will probably use a challenger bank, no problem with that. you want to start working internationally. Now you're looking more at the more traditional bank because they have a more a stronger infrastructure. When I was referring to Web 3.0, I don't think any of the banks is there yet. Yes, they're putting an app in front of you. Yes, they're putting a chat in front of you, but it's related really to what we're talking about the relationship manager. A lot of banks are doing business banking, but they're not business banks, which is you are an entrepreneur, you have a lot of resources, there are a lot of smart things that you do. How can you talk with a business manager who knows about business, who can help you to progress your business, such as Web 3.0, crypto? How can you use some of your assets as a collateral to make your business progress? These are really big questions that I'm really demanding about because I have big ambitions for my business, but these are not answered for the moment, because all banks are trying to do at the moment is make fees on this and that. They're not thinking about how do we make this business grow or help them to grow so we can become one of their partners. So to my point is really strong that the business bank does not exist in the UK, maybe except the British business bank. And you have to navigate with a lot of features that are not comparable, which makes that at the end, if you want to be successful, you will probably have 3 or 4 business accounts.
Lovely, thanks for that, Frederic. James, let me sort of bring you in. I think earlier in the conversation you kind of mentioned that you know, you've got a number of sort of different accounts, and they're very much happened as a result of kind of looking around for service that you needed to support that particular, whether it was the buy to let or some of the sort of your core festival business. Do you kind of tend to agree with sort of Frederic's point there that a lot of services that you're seeing as a business owner, entrepreneur, they're not necessarily directly for businesses, but they provide some of the services that that businesses need. So there's a kind of slight mismatch in a way.
I think I'm probably in a different position to Frederic, where my needs from a bank account are very different. I think Frederic mentioned crypto. That's one thing I would like to see a way to accept crypto payments. However, I'm aware that that may come with time, and not everything can happen overnight. But my personal main need from a business bank account is an easy interface to be able to view my previous transactions and set up payments from one person to another. The growth of my business wouldn't really be impacted by having any extra services from the bank, even borrowing money, because the growth strategies I have don't actually really require lending facilities or anything like that. So mine is just more about the simplicity and ease of using the bank account and ease of being able to contact them if there is a problem as well.
Okay, lovely. Thanks for that, James. Helen, Starling Bank, before I sort of bring you in, let me just sort of turn to Joe Ainsley at Current Accounts Switch Service. Joe, there's a few really interesting things that have come out in the last sort of couple of minutes. I saw you kind of nodding in a few kind of places. One, I think, going back to the kind of research was, I think what you asked some questions around whether a switching incentive, so the sort of, you know, a fee to encourage people to switch from one account to another would be part of their decision-making process. Frederic is a tough customer, so it's not going to take a little kind of little sort of fee to get him to sort of switch. But there's some kind of interesting points, weren't there? Particularly, I think his point about, you know, business banking or business services. There isn't really a business bank. Any sort of thoughts on that kind of broader point?
Yeah, definitely, Lawrence, and I think you're absolutely right. There is lots of variation available on the market. Whether that variation is visible to people so that they can see that there's variation for them to get what they need, I think that is one of the challenges. And certainly from the conversations that we're hearing here today, lots of people are using different banks, and different banks are offering them different things. For me, and from the research that we've done historically and the conversations that we've had historically, the monetary incentive does not trigger deliver the same for a business customer as it does for a personal customer. We absolutely know that the personal customers see the incentive, £100, 150, whatever it may be, and they jump for that because that's a good amount for them. And we do have what we would deem serial switchers. People are watching these offers all the time, and they're quite happy to move their account from one bank to another and wait a few months and then move again and get another incentive. Business customers are absolutely not doing that at all. There was the recent business incentive scheme that was run by RBS/NatWest Group, and there were lots of businesses that were encouraged to switch their account, and there were different types of incentives. Many banks, many of the business customers chose not to switch their account. So that monetary incentive is not always the thing that moves them. I think from what we see here in this conversation is every business is different. You might get two sole traders, they'll be working very, very differently. The banks themselves need to look at what do these business customers need? What is it that works for them? And that one size fits all will not work at all. So we have to make sure that there's lots of options, irrespective of whether that's a high street bank or whether that's a digital bank. And then the individuals then can make the right decision to go to an organisation that will best serve them and support them with their business.
Lovely, thanks for that, Joe. Hang on a bit, there's a couple of hands going up. I know, James, you quickly wanted to make a point. Sorry, Helen, off what Joe was just saying there. James.
Yeah, so I had one of my businesses is with, I have two of my business accounts are with NatWest, and I got offered the switch scheme, and I think it was quite good. It was £3,000 or £4,000 to switch, and I was sort of half in shock about it. You're going to pay me £3,000 or £4,000 to leave you, and then they explained the reasoning behind it. And I sort of debated it until the deadline, and then I decided to move the banks, one of the businesses, to Metro. And even when it happened, I ended up procrastinating on the decision to the point where I missed the deadline, but wasn't even too bothered about it because of how important the ease of using the bank is. Like, and with Metro, I always had this thing where half the time I'd go to log in, my password wouldn't work, and I thought, I'm sure I'm doing this right. And then my sister said the same thing with her Metro bank, and eventually the other day I spoke to them on the phone, and they actually said that they have some kind of glitch on their system that if you enter in a password wrong, or if you enter something in, when you re-enter it, it remembers the previous one you put in. So you can be entering the right password, and then it still won't accept it, and you've got to reset everything and call them or get a magic word or an email in the post to reset your whole account. So it's little things like that that have been more important than money. As Joe said, it's not like a lot of the personal banking customers. It's because there's a lot more to it than money.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. That's good point. Helen, sorry, my apologies. Eventually can't bring you in. You've probably got a long list of points you wanted to kind of make. Sort of get stuck into them.
I'll try and keep it succinct, but I think the point that Joe made, I think, is the really important one here. And we've got four very different businesses, including Suelin's. And listen to the variety of experience in the different businesses and the different needs, just in the four examples we've got here. And I think that's what's really interesting about business banking is the fact that each business has its own priorities and its own needs. And as a bank, you know, we're absolutely focused on trying to make our service one that suits everybody. And I do just want to address Suelin's point. Obviously very sorry that you were declined, but we do have people available on the end of a phone 24/7, so you can speak to somebody, and I will definitely get somebody to speak to you. I'm very happy to do that. And I think the other point that's coming out, which is really fascinating for me, is the one thing that I hear time and time again from the businesses that I speak to is that they want their banking to be effortless, reliable, and solve their problems, because actually business owners like the ones on this call today want to run their business, whether that's growth, whether that's running the business. They want to focus on their business, and banking should make lives as simple and effortless as possible. And linked to that, you know, the CMA tried to bring better competition into the business banking market, and have now published the CMA survey results. And you can start to hear what other businesses think of the banks, and you can start to see how people rank the service they get. and you can start to compare the services that are available. And I think that's something that I would encourage all businesses to do.
Lovely, thanks for that, Helen. Chris Pond, let me just bring you in at this sort of point. You know, you made some really kind of interesting points about cash, and obviously there's a lot of sort of customers, particularly if, of you know, things like plumbers and electricians, hairdressers or whatever, who like to pay by cash, or we have a private investor magazine. Somebody sent us a check last week. Anybody on the age of 40 in our office didn't actually know what to do with a check, which was kind of to the point that Suelin made. It was kind of quite amusing. But from you know, from an inclusion perspective, I mean, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of businesses that you know, are struggling with the kind of digital sort of banking. Any sort of thoughts about perhaps how you would encourage them maybe to sort of transition and try a bit more sort of digital, so they're not excluded?
Yes, very much so, Lawrence, because as the point Liz made earlier was that many businesses are not only financially excluded, but they're digitally excluded as well. They're not, they don't have the confidence or the capital equipment or the services available to really access digital services. And I'm very keen that we do find ways of helping people make that transition from a dependence on cash towards digital alternatives. It's something that Helen and I have worked on in the past to see if we can find those sorts of digital tools which really do meet the needs of businesses and indeed of individuals using their personal banking services. But at the weekend, you know, I took the kids to a little Christmas fair locally, and probably half of the traders there, they were all sole traders, they couldn't operate in anything other than cash. And frankly, I had no cash with me, and therefore they lost the sales in those circumstances. So we've got to find ways. You know, the services are available now. Very often the connectivity is not great, but the services are available, and we've got to find a way of building the confidence of businesses and giving them the access to those digital tools, which really could make a big difference for the way that the prosperity and of their business operations.
Lovely, thanks for that, Chris. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to sort of the last sort of 8 or 9 minutes of our sort of discussion. So sort of final thoughts. Suelin, if you don't mind, I'll sort of come to you kind of first. You know, the classic really of a round table. What sort of takeaway? What would be the sort of message, or perhaps a learning for an entrepreneur who's been watching the last sort of 60 minutes? What would you say to that person that perhaps can help them take their business forward, particularly in the context of what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think the real positive is that the discussion is happening, and that, you know, banks are investing time and money and effort into wanting to get it right for us, and that's really positive. So, and I encourage entrepreneurs and smaller businesses and micro businesses to go out and to look, you know, do the research. I mean, I'm not an advocate of having, you know, like 5 bank accounts, because it just makes the lives of bookkeepers and accountants, and even yourself, I mean, you have to then start keeping track of everything. So I don't think that's necessarily the answer either. I think the banking industry needs to find that happy medium. I think you cannot throw the positives of high street banking out. The relationship management, I think the high street banks, and they are already doing that, are becoming more and more digital and trying to rival the likes of Starling. So that again, it's good. You know, I even though I have had my one little hiccup with Starling, I am still an advocate for Starling, and I will continue to recommend them, because I believe the ease at which you can open an account is there, and it takes away that sort of, oh, you know, let me just continue to use my personal account, because it's pretty easy to set up. So I encourage, you know, entrepreneurs, smaller businesses, go out, do the research, and have the discussion with your bank, you know, about what your needs are, and because we're discussing it, I'm sure there will be solutions.
Lovely, thanks for that, Suelin. Just in interest of balance, as though we're on the BBC, there are other business bank account providers other than Starling who've been mentioned a good few times in the last sort of 60 minutes, but I suspect for obvious reasons. Liz, Barclay, let me sort of come to you. Sort of final thoughts really on this sort of discussion. What do you, is this up to banks to do more? Is it up to businesses to do more? Is this the classic where the two sides of this equation need to just, you know, keep being sort of proactive with each other?
I think it's up to us all to do more. It's yeah, we need more confident businesses. We need businesses that know where to look for the help that they need when they need it. We need the banks to make their relationships a priority so that they can partner. They're actually working in partnership with their businesses to help them grow or not grow, as the case may be, because not all businesses want to grow. But we also need the technology to improve, and as it improves, it gets much easier for people to use. We need the connectivity as well. I talked to somebody the other day who said, I run my business on my smartphone. The only problem is I have to stand in the middle of a field to do it. You know, obviously there are still hiccups in those kind of processes. And of course, as younger people come on board in businesses, they're bringing those digital skills with them. They're not scared to ask the questions. They're not scared to drag a small business, you know, into the digital era. But we've also got to remember that we've got Making Tax Digital coming down the pipeline in 2024, when small businesses are going to have to be digital in order to pay their tax, etc. So there are incentives there that will push that along. And I think we've all got to work together to make it as easy as possible for businesses to be digital, but to do their banking digitally, but to talk to somebody when they need someone to talk to. And that might be 3 o'clock in the morning. So there you go. There's my challenge to the banks. It's not just in bank opening hours that we have crises about our business and want a relationship with somebody who can help. And I think the positive is that the banks are really beginning to understand that they may have moved slightly too far away from the businesses, and they need to readjust that pendulum somewhat.
Can I just say, Lawrence, I couldn't agree more with what Liz has said. It's so important, and that concept of being there 24/7 for our businesses is vital. And long may we see many more businesses growing.
And Helen, can a business like yours cope with that 3 o'clock in the morning moment?
Absolutely. 24/7, 365 days a year. We've always got somebody there.
All right, lovely. Edwin, what would you like your banks or potential banks that you may use in the future to be able to offer to help you kind of grow and continue to make your business successful?
So, I mean, like I said, I'm kind of happy, but in terms of adding, I mean, the integration sometimes is not very seamless. So that is what I'm looking for in terms of the bookkeeping. But overall, it is something that would entice me is, you know, I was just thinking while this was happening, I don't know if they can offer something like a trial period or something of that sort. I know it is difficult, but it's just a thought really, because, you know, you get trial offers or some kind of a demo trial wherein, you know, just to look at how user-friendly that particular, you know, the website is, the app is. It might be a little bit far-fetched, but while the discussion happening, I was just thinking, what would actually entice me to do this? But otherwise, it has been quite a smooth ride in terms of, for me, with my current bank that I'm banking with. It really, I mean, it's for me to think of banking because of the user friendliness and the comfort that I've been working with it for such a long time. I do not want to take a risk of you know, moving out to another bank, because you never know. I mean, there might be a few negatives with NatWest Bank, but it's something that's manageable by me. I mean, that's something that I can cope with in my business, unless and until my experiences go really bad. Like, for example, I have to call them for some particular thing, and you know, the waiting time is too much. I mean, I do have issues with my personal banking with NatWest sometimes, you know, but with my business, I've been okay so far. Okay, so I think it's got to be a little bit more than that for me to to move out.
Thank you for that. That's a really interesting suggestion about the sort of demo period. Frederic, let me come to you. I mean, you're clearly, if not already a serial entrepreneur, you will be in the future. I can't imagine you're only going to be doing the business you are sort of currently. What would you like out of the banking system? You know, what does banking 3.0 look to you like?
I think, thank you. I think all the points have been mentioned. It's really a question for the bank to realize that we are at the center of the relationship as entrepreneurs, and they need to provide us a service. It's a very traditional industry who used to have a lot of power in their hands in terms of holding your money and your deposit. But this is changing very quickly as we're seeing the digitalization of money. So obviously, this is our money, we're creating it via work and creation of products, and we should be able to manage it as we wish, as long as it stays compliant with HMRC, for example, in the UK. And at the moment, that's not appearing. To get back to the question of switch or not switch, and to a point that Joe said that business people are not looking to switch. The reality is that when you have a business running and you have direct debit set up or money coming in based on subscription you have from your clients, it will be very difficult for you to switch because you will have to spend a lot of time retying up all those connections. So what will happen is that eventually you have 3 or 4 bank accounts, so you manage your bets and you try to take the most of each bank account. So I would say the return to the business bank, people in front of you that understand about business, that are updated about what is happening in the business world, the financial world, and that you can discuss with in order to make your business grow is probably what needs to be happening in the banking system. I'm really torn between the old traditional bank that do have an app and the infrastructure, and the challenger bank that are fully digital but lack a bit of infrastructure. And there's not a clear choice there except trying to use as many as possible without really receiving this business service yet.
Super. Thank you very much for those thoughts. James, for you, is there anything you kind of need, you would like to see the banking system provide to help you grow your business?
Nothing that I don't think will happen over time. For example, the cryptocurrency, being able to accept payments from there. There's nothing that I have an issue with on a day-to-day or even year-to-year basis that gives me any concern from my banks at the moment. So, as long as they keep up with the times as best as possible, it can't all be overnight, then I'm very happy.
Good. Well, it's nice to have a happy customer. Sort of Helen at Starling Bank, any sort of last thoughts from yourself?
I just want to really say that I think we've got an incredible industry of people who are running small businesses, sole traders. They really do play a massive role in our economy, and it's been a really tough 2 years. And really, as a bank, we absolutely want to support all of those businesses, all of those creative people. And I think this has been a really, really fascinating conversation, bringing many themes out. And I just want to say that, absolutely, Starling is using its capability to try and support businesses in that way, and we will continue to grow and do so.
Super. Chris, any sort of final thoughts from you? I guess if you're not digital at the moment in the way you operate your business, perhaps be brave and make sort of tiny steps in that direction would be one of your thoughts.
Yeah, certainly that, Lawrence, and also to underline what Helen has just said, that those businesses are so essential as we try to rebuild after this pandemic. We need to make sure that they get the support that they need from financial services, that they're able to access those financial services, and also that we make sure that there is real choice for them in terms of the accounts that they're using, that they know what's available out there, and that they feel safe in making a decision to move from an account which perhaps is not providing them with the best service that they need, and which doesn't really allow their business to grow in the way that it could.
Lovely, thank you very much, Chris. And Joe Ainsley at Current Account Switch Service, I'll leave the sort of final thoughts to you. I mean, I guess one of which is perhaps to reiterate how easy it is to switch if somebody is thinking about it. But any other sort of other thoughts?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think what I've taken from today is I've got a real now a clearer sense around what are the things that stop people from wanting to even consider switching. I think there's been a few discussions here today where they talked about the elongated process for being able to open an account. It's complicated. It feels like it's a big task, and that in itself just stops people maybe even looking and exploring. So that's something we need to try and to see where we can understand that a little bit more, to see how we can improve on that, and then ensure that the availability of the service is there and that people are aware of it. It is very simple to use a service to switch away once you've chosen where you want to go to, and it will do everything automated for you. So going back to Frederic's point around, we then have to move, payments coming in or payments going out, all of that is done for you. That is all automated. So having the awareness of just how easy the service is and how much effort it can take away from the business owners, and the banks will deal with that for you, I think is another key one. And then I think the other thing for me is we've heard some great stories around what the banks are doing that is really, really good for our businesses. There's some really key areas there that have come out very strong, but we've also highlighted a number of areas that there is still a lot more work to do. And as Chris and as Liz both said, as we go through this economy and we're coming through the recovery, the small businesses have felt that pain massively. The banks, whichever bank it is, needs to be here to help to rebuild those businesses and to support them now through that transition as we rebuild the economy. I think it's been a fantastic discussion today. The amount of information that's been shared has been absolutely wonderful, and it's certainly opened my eyes into some of the other areas that we need to support with as we go forward and to continue these conversations for some time to come.
Super. Joe, thank you very much for your time and those sort of final thoughts. To everybody who's been on the panel discussion today, just I'd like to echo sort of Joe's thoughts. Some really lively, informative kind of views and comments that came out of that. I hope to you, the audience, that you found it useful. I mean, I'm sure it's triggered loads of sort of questions in your own mind. If it has, I mean, please get in touch with your own banking provider. Go and have a look at the CAS website if you sort of, again, to Joe's point, not entirely sure what it takes to sort of move a business bank account. You'll see lots of impartial, independent information. CAS is an independent organisation, doesn't recommend anybody. But if you've got any specific inquiries, I mean, please just post them on the question function that will be part of the website, and we'll try and get them directed in the right way for you. But from me, Lawrence Gosling, and my panel, thank you very much for joining us today.